Well, hello there. Good morning, and so good to see you. What I'm thinking about this morning is, I'm always thinking about different topics in Heilkunst medicine, but specifically this morning, I'm thinking about the way I study. The way I've been now involved in Heilkunst for I think just over 25 years, if I go back into the beginning of the student years. Um, and I've been reflecting on because some people have kind of just privately been asking me, about my study notes and my how I keep my study system together and how I work with it and everything. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. It's kind of evolved to a new process lately in the last few months, and I want to share it with you. I think it would be quite useful, for anyone who's studying Heilkunst or anything kind of related to our fields. Of course, we also study anthroposophy and ergonomy, but just to give you a little peek into my process, and you can, of course, take what's useful for you, and you can apply that how it makes sense for you. But I do think there's something that a lot of people can take from this, and this is what I want to share. So, anyways, as I say, a few months ago, I've kind of come into a little bit of a different way of keeping my notes and my files on my computer and everything. And I'll come to that momentarily, but I first actually want to show you um, what I have been using for a number of years. Excuse me while I shift my screen here. For a number of years, I was using this program. It's called The Brain. That's the name of this software, or I think it also goes by the name Personal Brain. And it's still a great program. I probably may still use it in some way, but I've been in the process of transferring all of my notes and my data out of this system into the new one that I'll show you. But actually, even before I get into, excuse me, just a second here. I think make sure my screen is doing what I want it to do. Um, one of the things of this brain, as it's called, is it's very visual. So it's kind of visual friendly that way. People like to see, how different thoughts or notes relate to each other. And as you can see, what I have on the screen, I'm not going to go deeply into this program, but I've got this main node called anthroposophic ergonomic Heilkunst, and everything kind of branches out of that. I go into the three different branches of anthroposophy, Heilkunst, and ergonomy, and each one of those, kind of go off into its own little world, right? It's all the things there. So I say I don't want to go too deeply into this program, but other than that, I still love it and I still will use it in some way, but I'll show you my new program in a moment. So as we can see here, thoughts are related to each other, and things are what are called child thoughts or sibling thoughts. You don't need to know the technical words of all that. Here we have Julian Winston, and he wrote this book called The History of Homeopathy, and I can kind of keep kind of exploring all these different links I've created in this visual way. And of course, if I have a file or I have a link to a website, I put it here. But as I said, I don't want to go too deeply into this. This is just where I came from. Something I've been using, but this new program I'm using that I'll show you actually serves my needs even a little better than this does. And let's get into that. This what I've been using is this program called Obsidian. So sorry, this is a kind of a big blank page. Sorry if that startles you, but essentially what Obsidian is, and one of the main reasons I like it, um, is that it's essentially using just plain text files off of my own computer, right? So it's private to me. It's you know it's there's no risk with any number of software that software goes out of business and you lose all everything you've put into that software over the years. Um, or even kind of more of a modern problem, you get into this problem of all these public companies feeling they need to basically censor you. If you start having content that goes against the powers that be, your account could get closed down, or they can delete a certain file if it's whatever. Well, I don't want to have my data subject to someone else's corporate mandates. So this program Obsidian, as I say, it just uses the files on your computer. Now, of course, anything you're doing on your own computer, you have to be responsible and make sure you're backing that up somewhere, right? Because if something happens to your computer, you don't want to lose everything. So you just take you just be a good responsible computer user, and you have multiple backups, which I do. I have all my data, of course, is on my computer, but I also keep it like on hard drive backups and other offsite backups and things like that. I don't want to talk about the technicalities of backup, but if you're not backing up your computer, this is just your public service announcement. Please back it up. Everything from your photos and your personal notes and your files and all the things that you would hate to lose. Well, just make sure they're backed up. Public service announcement over. When it comes to studying Heilkunst, and I'll get into this in a little more detail here, where it's not just a matter of memorizing information. We could remember that arnica is for bruises, and this remedy is for this remedy is for that, but we're not just mere information processors, right? I mean, a computer can do that. A reference book can do that. You can look up a remedy in Materia Medica. You can look things up on your computer or what have you, but the information is always there. You can always look it up. But especially in Heilkunst, we're really trying to develop a much kind of deeper sense of what things actually mean, right? And you can't do that with just mere information. A computer can do that with mere information, but a computer cannot really produce knowledge. And I know there's all the buzz now about AI, artificial intelligence, but trust me, no matter how advanced AI gets, it's never going to be a form of knowledge. It's still going to be manipulating information. So for what it's worth, this is good news for us. With our human consciousness, we will always have the ultimate edge over any so-called AI system or whatever, right? And this is important. The way we study, the way we absorb all the books we read and the materia medicas and everything else, we have to turn it into this something that's unique to us, which is this form of knowledge, this deeper interconnection, what we would say more in our Heilkunst context. We really want to be awakening and developing our etheric mind, which can do something that's unique to us, which is draw all the connections between the information, to really build up this true body of knowledge within ourselves, which is, as I just said a moment ago, really a function of our etheric body. The information, leave that to the computers, but what we want to do in our studies is really develop this higher form of information. Sorry for the noise. Today's Revolution Day in Mexico, so we may hear a lot of fireworks, as you just may have heard a second ago. And there's marching band I can hear off in the distance, and it's kind of fun out there on the streets. But we're going to be focused here on our study material. So as I said, the way this Obsidian program works, all the files are just right there on my computer, so they're mine. Nobody can censor them. Nobody, even if Obsidian goes out of business one day, doesn't matter. I still have all my files. They're still on my computer, and some other similar program can access the files the same way that Obsidian does. There are already similar programs on the market, so there are already kind of backups in terms of the software scene. But yeah, it's on my computer. It's private. I own the files. Nobody can touch them. Nobody can delete them or take them away from me. I back them up, as I said. And it's really this is just mirroring a folder that I designated on my computer. And everything that I put into that folder is reflected in this Obsidian program. So you can see here down on the left, these are all the folders, and you can open up any one of those folders. Let's say I have my to read folder, and I've kind of collected a bunch of articles or books or different things that I want to read, and I can just kind of move them around on this board according to whatever my priorities are. Let's say here I have this notate the regimen principles from Waddles. That was a book I have already read, but here's me capturing that I want to go back and I just want to take notes on what I highlighted in that book. I haven't done that yet. So this is just a nice example of how you can organize some of your notes. Or let's go into a little bit more of actually, let me go over to this, because here is a key part of my whole study process is, oops, and let me open it up here. It's Freedom Wilson PDF. Yeah, I just want to open this note. When I first read a book, studying something for the purpose of everything I'm doing here, all of my Heilkunst studies, I first start with it actually on my iPad. I can sit on the couch with my iPad. I can kind of be in a more kind of receptive kind of reading mode. Kind of an absorbing mode. I'm just kind of taking things in. What does this author have to say? What are my impressions? I'm kind of absorbing it. And when I'm sitting there on my iPad, I don't have my iPad set up for this presentation purpose. I'm just going to describe it to you. I can actually, as you can see here on my iPad, I have a highlighting function, and I have an underline function. I can actually, with my Apple Pencil, write notes in the margin. I don't have an example right here, but it's in my handwriting. So that's kind of the beginning of my study. I'm just, as I say, passively, receptively, I'm just taking it in, reading, and jotting down some notes, some highlights, and things like that. And I'm just kind of, oh, here it is. Here's a handwritten note I did on my iPad, and that will that basically will I'll come back around to it when I'm doing more of my active note taking. I'll look at all my notes that I kind of absorbed here, and I'll kind of develop more of an active process of note taking. I'll actually show you that in a moment. Here, actually, let me just open up a window here, and we'll have let's say what JMK notes on Wilson. So yeah, so here's the let me just close this window down. So here's the original PDF I took notes on, and then when I come back to my computer, now I can be more active in actually taking in all these notes I took. So here we have the introduction, and here's where I took the notes. So Rudolf Steiner was born in 1861, died in 1925. That's in the original book. So I just take a note of that. Rudolf Steiner, born 1861, died 1925. Now you can see that these are kind of in a purple font and underlined. I'm going to show you more about that in a moment, but that actually is a link to another note. I'll show you exactly how that works. But I go through everything I read. I take down these notes. It was made clear in his book, and he did this and he did that, and the reality of the spiritual world was as certain to me as that of the physical. So it's like I kind of take down all these notes, and I just put them more in a more. Oh, that was a nice blast. Put them into a more formal note-taking process here. So it's pretty basic, but it's plenty for my purposes. It has underlining and highlighting and bolds and italics, so you can make pretty good notes just with those basic formatting pieces. Now let me show you a little bit more about that. So let's say I start a new note here. Let's just call this um, the the features of Obsidian, which is what we're talking about. So I can do, let's say, bullet points. I can say point 1, point 2, point 3, and then I can do kind of further indentation, um, point A, point B, point C. And now, as you can see, this little drop-down arrow here, I can actually collapse those points, right? So I can make a very complex outline, more ideas, different, start to type and talk at the same time, different point, another thing, and so on and so on. And it just becomes this more complex outline, which I can get back to and access like that. So that's very nice. I do a lot of outlines like this because then I can really get what are the big ideas in a piece. Here's a main point, and then here's the sub point. It really helps to think about what are the thoughts, the bigger thoughts of this book, right? Because the highlighting is nice. It helps me refocus back in. But when I make my notes here, like in this note on the right, I kind of organize them more into a structure so I can like it's just to help me to understand what is the structure being presented here. If somebody has three main points, I can put them into a hierarchy like that, and so on. I can even put images. I don't know if I have any. Yeah, I actually have an image right here on my desktop. I can drop it right into the note. That's actually a famous Escher drawing I was looking at the other day. and it's right there in my folder. And everything I'm doing here, as I said, these are all in files right on my Mac. And this Obsidian program, as I'm adding things to my node, as I'm dragging and dropping things, as I'm putting in points, it's organizing those files on my Mac for me, right? It's putting them into the folder, it's putting them into a subfolder, and so on. So I don't have to be really, really focused on managing the file system on my Mac. I'm just managing my notes. I'm in my notes. I'm thinking about what I'm studying, and I'm basically letting the Obsidian program do this. Now, let's start a second node. Let's call this new node, very original, right? And so now I'm going to go back, and in this, my first node here, I'm going to say more ideas, C, and I'm going to do double square bracket, and I'm going to say new node, that one I just created, and it's going to basically create a link to that node, right? See new node for more info. So, okay, well, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to click on new node, and it's going to actually take me to that new node. And I'm going to say, hello from the new node. And I'm going to actually go back arrow to go back where I came from, just like on the web. So now when I click on new node, I can see, oh yeah, here's all the other things I have to say over here. Don't forget, and remember this and that, and so on and so on. So my new note is developing, and I just simply, as I did a moment ago, I put it into these double square brackets, okay? So that seems maybe a little technical. It's not very hard to learn these things, and I can actually, if I put an exclamation point before those two square brackets, it will visibly embed that note right here in front of me. So I don't even have to, I don't have to go back to my new note over here. I can actually see it right here, and in fact, I can I can basically, yeah, see everything that's in that new note. And when I go and add something to the new note, I'll say, let's say, new point here, and I come back here, and that's been added into this little embedded section. So that's very nice. So now you can have this. This is really one of the main ideas of Obsidian, is you not only can link notes to each other, but you can also really you really kind of embed them and interlink them, so you can have this very rich way of accessing different notes. Because let's say I go to yet another new note, say call this one the newest note of them all. Oops, of them all. And this one has what does this one have? Well, more points to think about. And so now the let me embed this one. So let's say this was the newest node of them all. Now that one is embedded here too. So I can have that here, or I can even go back to the newest node of them all, and I can embed that other node, new node. So that new node can be embedded in this file, and let's see how that looks over here. So now, so now this is gets to be a little bit of almost like a house of mirrors in a sense. I have the new node up here, but I also have the newest node of them all, and it has the new node. So the new node is over here, but it's also over here. And of course, every time I change, the new node to say something else, now that will show up over here in the new node, and it'll show up over here where this is also the new node. So I'm sorry, this is maybe getting a little bit kind of complex looking. Let's close that down, and yeah, let's go back to just our basic note taking. So here are my notes. Now this Obsidian uses a format called Markdown. I've been aware of Markdown for many years, but I never used it. It didn't really make much sense to me. I was like, well, I have a computer, it has bold, it has italic, it has all these things. Why would I need to use something else? But once I understood it in the context of Obsidian, it actually now makes sense to me. I can, in my note-taking process, I can be a lot more fast, a lot quicker in how I access things like bold and italic and all that. So let me say, here is my notes, and then I'll say bold for something important. And I got the bold just by doing two asterisks, as you can see. And then I can say single asterisk, here is italic in the single asterisk. And then I can say, here's two equal signs. Here is a highlight between two equal signs, and so on. So as I'm doing my notes, because I'm very much of a keyboard typing guy. I don't anytime I have to take my hand off the keyboard to touch the mouse or the trackpad, it feels like I'm losing time, which I am. So everything I just stay on the keyboard. I can say high bold. I can say italics again, and so on and so on. So the formatting is there. I already showed you the double square brackets with the new note, and that links the file to the new note. So now that I start to get all these files that are linked, here's actually, reminiscent of going back to that other program I showed you of the brain. We can get something similarly visual. I can say, open the linked view, open the local graph, and there I can see, here's my note that we're in the note called the features of Obsidian, which is here, but look, it's linked to this other note, the newest note of them all, and it's also linked to this other note called new note. So I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Now, this is actually not that interesting because I'm just making up, I'm making up random files here which don't really have anything interesting in them, just new note and hello bold and whatever. But let's look at that graph view when we go into the full. Let me just close down this window here. So we're back into our philosophy of freedom, but let's actually open what's called the graph view. And now, so starting with, well, basically, yeah, this is where we started. Let me move this over here. This is, oh, actually, that's not where we were. Let me see. Well, anyway, let's just stay with where we are. Let's keep things simple. And we have basically. Let me shrink this down a little bit. This actually, let's shrink it way down, right? So this is the Obsidian view of my whole system of all my nodes, right? All these. It looks like you're looking up into the starry sky at night and all the constellations. Well, this is essentially what you start to create as you create notes. You take notes on Hahnemann, on Steiner. You take all your notes on different books, and gradually, as you link different notes together, you start to get this kind of constellation view of what's linked to what. So I'm kind of way zoomed out here, but let's start zooming in a little bit more. What have we got here? Oh yeah, we have my notes on a certain book called Christ and Sophia, and you can see all the other links that I've created there. So let's find an example here. So yeah, this book, for example, makes mention of this concept over here. So let's go over to that concept. And actually, that's going to take me into the note. I want it to stay in the graph view. But you can start to see where things interlink with each other. And actually, let me zoom back in again. Here's our note. We actually saw this a moment ago. And let's go back to the local view. Open the local graph. So rather than seeing the full constellation of everything, these are all the links I created related to this particular note. So it's quite rich, as you can see, all the notes I took on this one book. And let's zoom in a little bit. So you can start to see, there's different concepts I've linked to. There's, other books I've linked to, like Edward von Hartmann's book over here. Let me zoom in more. And that book I linked to the idea of the nether being, and the nether being I linked to the idea of the ego wedge and Wilhelm Reich, on and on and on. All these links, they just start becoming more and more rich. So for the purposes of study, as I say, this is showing you more the user interface here in Obsidian. But why I like it so much, and I think you're probably getting the point of this, is for my purpose of study, is it's helping me to develop my understanding of how do I link this concept to this other concept over here, right? I have to find those links. I have to think through what are the concepts we're talking about here. So Obsidian is just, it's just a dumb computer program. All computers are dumb, but it's very smart in the sense of how it can help me to do what I want to do with all that. So let me come back off screen here. So that's, let me just stop sharing that screen. Yeah, I just wanted to give you some of the basic nuts and bolts there, but I could go into a lot more detail. I haven't shown you every little feature, every little nook and cranny. I just wanted to give you that idea of how I create connections, how I link my ideas, how I kind of kind of helps me, and it also helps me, like when I go back and I review a given note that I took, it'll remind me, oh yeah, I connected this idea over here, and I connected the idea of Hahnemann's idea of Wesen. I connected to Steiner's idea of pure thinking over here, and and I can start to refresh my own thinking process and say, oh yeah, I can, that's over here and that connects over. So this whole etheric way of thinking, I basically get to capture in my notes, right? And then I get to go back and revisit it later. So as I say, I could go into a lot more detail, um, but as I say, I can go into a lot more detail. But yeah, I'll go into anything that people are interested in. But for today, I just kind of wanted to give the overview and kind of this idea of how this system, not only, as I said, does it stay on my computer and it stays private to me and all of that, but it just will be mine forever, right? I never have to worry about software disappearing and all these things. But the most important thing is really this developing of an etheric, this etheric process of thinking, and how I can kind of capture that and preserve that and just continue to develop that over the years. So I'll leave it at there, but as I say, I'll come back around if anyone wants to go further into anything. But this, I think, is a good introduction for today.